Guys, in this video, we will learn how to implement API authentication in Laravel application. So we will use Laravel Sanctum for authentication. So let's get started with an example. So I already downloaded fresh Laravel application. You can see that, and also configured the database. You can see here, I already fresh set up everything. So now, first of all, what we will do, if I go here into the routes, there is no api.php file. So first of all, I need to go to the Laravel Sanctum documentation, and if you scroll down it here, so you can see that there is a simple command to install the API, and that will be default install the Sanctum as well. So now let me go and simply run that command. So I will say API install, and you can see that it will also download it Laravel Sanctum, so we can use the authentication system. Okay, so simply it's downloading, and I will say yes, it's published migration as well. Okay, and you can see that it's create, please add Laravel Sanctum API token trade to the user model. So now if I go to the down, okay, you can see that here is the simple I need to use has API tokens into the user model. So let me go here, okay, and go to the models user, and I will simply use add it here and simply use it over here. Okay, simply save it. Okay, and now what I will do, I will simply create login and register to API and simply do that. So first of all, let me create the controller for it. So I will say php artisan mac controller, and I will say auth, and I will say sorry API, and I will say auth controller. Okay, and now if you go here into the controller file, there is a API folder. Inside that there is a auth controller. Okay, and here you can see that api.php. So first of all, what I will do, I will simply this comment things, all the things, and I will create one route over here, and that will say post route, and for register user, so I will say register, and we already used auth controller colon class, and I will create register method over there. Okay, so we can call simply register route, and user will register, simply use it over here, the API slash auth controller, simply save it. Okay, now let me go and simply create one method over here, and I will say register method, and I will simply return and response, and I will say JSON response, and here I will be simply return right now status equal to 1. Okay, simply save it, and let's see it's running or not. So let me go here into the postman, I already open, and let me simply copy our application URL localhost 8000. So I will say simply 8000, and I will say post. Okay, and simply send it, and you can see that like unreachable. So let me run our application. So I will say php artisan sir. Okay, and it will run the application, and now let me send it again. So you can see here there is a method call, sorry, we need to pass the API slash register. So I will say send it, and you can see that I got the status equal to 1. So like I can call easily API. Okay, so now let me go and first add the validation. So I will say like validator, and I will use validator and colon I will say mac, and I will simply request all the details, and I will add the validation. So what I will get, the name first I will get, and that will be a required field, and then I will say email, and I will also say required, and I will right now just adding the validation quickly, and I will say password, and that also will be the required field for now, and simply add the validation, nothing big. So confirm underscore password, and simply I will say required, and same thing, same should be the password field. Okay, if everything going, if anything wrong, so I will say if condition, and I will say validator, and if there is a fails, okay, if validation fails, then it return response and with the all errors, so JSON. So I will simply predefine our response. So I will say first should be the status key, and status key will be 0 or 1. If 0, then that means something is going wrong, and if status 1, that means going well. And I will say message, and I will say validation errors. Okay, and simple I will give data and data with all the validation errors. So simply I will call validator errors and I will say simply all. Okay, simply semicolon at the end. If everything going fine, let's check with the validation first, and let me use the validation over here. So validator, and I will say okay, validator, let me use it. Okay, and now let's see and check it. If I click on send, you can see that name field is required, email field is required. Okay, so let me quickly add name. So I will say like John, and then I will say email, and I will say John at the rate gmail.com. Okay, and now I will say simply password, and I will say 1234564 for now, and I will also pass confirm underscore password, and I will say 123456. Okay, simply hit send. You can see still confirm password is required, so maybe the confirm, so confirm, so spelling was mistake. So you can see here now status 1, so everything going well, then it returns over here. So what if everything going well, then I will create a user first. So I will say user colon create, and I will say name, and that will be getting from the request object. So I will say name, and I will also email. So I will simply get from the request object request email, and then I will say password, and I will see bcrypt, and I will say request and password. Okay, simply save it. Once user will be created, we will create a token. So what we need to do, so simply go here into the documentation. You can see that they're already provided like create token method. So I will simply go and create token like this way. So simply go here and I will say user create token. I just need to pass like my app name, and then you can see here another method like plain token. So I will simply use that one into the documentation. So I will say plain token, and I will create one response array over here. So simply I will create the token first. So I will store token as a token key. So simply go token. Okay, and then I will say simply name of the user, so we understand like response, and that will be a name of the user. So I will say user name. Okay, if you want to pass the email as well, then you can pass the email. So I will also pass the email and email. Okay, and here is the response status one, and I will say message, and message will be simple user register. Okay, you just registered. Okay, simply ed. So and then I will say data, and data will be passed as a response. Okay, what we have, and simply save it. Okay, and now let me go here, and you can see that john at the rate gmail.com 123456 the password, and if hit submit, and you can see that there is something wrong, and I will say user not found. So I will go and simply use it over here. So I will say user not found simply, and if I send it again, you can see that I got the proper response, user registered with the token john email. This token we will use for authentication. Right now you can see that this is the simple register API with the post request. Same thing, we need to create the login API. So let me go and create another API, and I will say post, and I will simply say login, and here I will say auth controller class, and I will simply use the login, save it. Okay, and here I will create the login method. So simply go here, and I will say login. Okay, here I will be use the auth. So I will say simply auth and attempts. Okay, and I will simply pass the array. So I will say email and request email, and then I will say simply password, and I will simply call request password. Okay, simply save it. If attempts good and like everything fine, then I will get the user from the auth colon user. Okay, and simply return it. So I will simply copy the success response and simply paste it over here, and I will simply pass the user for now over here. Okay, and if anything goes wrong, then I will simply paste the response, and I will say simply status will be the 0 and authentication error I will say, and I will simply return null. Okay, now let me simply check this. Okay, and now if I go here and simply copy this, okay, and remove, and I will say login API, and I will pass post method, and I will pass the email. So I will say john at the rate gmail.com, and password I'm just passing 333 random, and hit send. And now if I go like auth is not found, so simply I need to use it over here. So let me go and use auth, save it. Okay, and send it. You can see there like status 0, authentication error null. If I pass the correct password, so 123 456 whatever we said for register, if I hit, you can see that I got register user perfectly fine. Same thing, we also need to generate the token for it. So same method I will use for it. So I will simply use it over here, and same thing. So I will copy it, this response. Okay, paste it over here, like create a token and simply email, and I will return register response. Okay, now it's simple. If I send it, you can see that I got the token. Okay, so you can see that how easily we can create like login and register using the Sanctum. Okay, and we also receive the token. Now what we need to do, if I go here for example, and I will create one route over here, I will say route, and I will use the resource route for, I will say post. Okay, and I will call post controller. So I will say controller colon class. Okay, simply save it. Okay, and now let me use it over here. Same thing, let me create the class over here as well. So I will say php artisan mac controller, I will say api slash post controller. Okay, and you can see that it's also created a post controller, and you can see resource route. So if I go here and let me clear it, php artisan, and I will say route column list. Okay, and hit enter. You can see that we created a login and register route, and a resource route created post, like post list of post, create post, and that also created like update the post and delete the post route. So this route only access if user is login. Okay, and user, if user pass the token, like authenticated user only access this post route. Okay, so right now if I save it, okay, and if I go it and go to the controller and let me create and simply return a response, and I will say simply status equal 1. Okay, and simply save it. Okay, now let me go and run our application. So I will say php artisan serve. Okay, and I will go and I will simply copy it and simply go and I will run the post API. Okay, so I will say post. Okay, and simply send it. You can see that now I can easily access. Okay, so now what I will do, I will add the middleware on it. So I will say route colon middleware, and you can see that Laravel already defined auth colon sanctum middleware. So I will simply copy and add over here, and I will simply create the group and function, and I will say, so inside that group only authenticated user can access this. Okay, so if I go here and if I click on send, you can see that I got something like unexpected, what I say, unexpected end of file. So maybe I forgot semicolon over here, and if I go and refresh, you can see that login route is not defined. So that means by default it's using like like auth session auth. So you need to just pass one header over here, like I will accept application JSON. Okay, and if I click on send, you can see that I got simply JSON response, and you can see that unauthenticated. So that means you can only access this route if you are authenticated. So now what I will do, I will simply pass this token. Okay, so I will simply copy this token. Okay, and what you have to do, simply go here and I will say authorization. So here is also authorization, and I will say bearer, and you need to pass the bearer token. Okay, and simply if I click on send, you can see that I got the response properly. If you don't pass this authorization header, then you will get unauthenticated. If you pass correct the token, bearer token, then you will get perfect response. So now let me create the post table and quickly create the CRUD operation. So only this CRUD operation access if user is authenticated. So if I say clear it, and I will say simply Mac, and I will say migration, and simply say create post table. And now if I go here and simply go to the migration over here, database migration, and here you just need to add, I will say string data type with the title, and I will say body column with the text data type. Okay, simply save it. Okay, and now let me run the migration php artisan migrate. And now if you go to the database, I created simply post table with the title and body. Okay, and now let me create model for it. So I will say php artisan mac model, and I will say post. Okay, post model is created. Now if I go here, you can see that, and simply I will define the column name. So I will say protected fillable, and I will say title, and I will say body. Simply save it. Okay, and we already created the post, so I will simply use that model over here. So I will say like post. Okay, and simply I will get list of all post. So I will use the pagination for it. So I will say paginat, and I will just make it 5 pagination. Okay, and simple I will pass the message what we decided the format, and I will say post fetched, and simply I will pass the data what we return. So I will say post, simply save it. Okay, and now let me go and run it again, the API, and if I click on send, yeah, there is again I need to run the application. So I will say php artisan serve. Okay, and if I hit refresh, you can see that I got perfectly post. Okay, and now also let me create the create post route over here. So I will simply go, and we already have, if I go here and let me show you the route. Okay, and I will say route list. So you can see that we already have created post route, update route. So we just need to simply create the method on the controller and it will work. Okay, so let me simply run it again, the application. And okay, here I will be create the store method. Okay, and I will use the validation. So we already have defined the validation, so I will simply copy that one, you can see here, and simply quickly paste it here. So I will simply say title is required and body is required. Okay, so I don't require email, simply remove this one. Okay, and I will use the validator over here, validator, and simply save it. Okay, if everything goes fine, then it comes here and it will create one post. So I will say post colon create, and I will say title, and I will take title from the request object. So I will say title, and if I say body, and I will say request, and I will say body. Okay, and simply save it. Okay, and if everything going fine, then I will simply say response JSON, and I will say simply status one, and message will be simply post created. Okay, and then I will say data, and data I will simply pass the post object what we created, simply save it. Okay, and now let me go here and to the postman and simply copy and run the post API. So I will call post and I will pass, okay, like title, okay, and I will say first title, and then I will say body, and I will say like first body. Okay, same thing, we also need to pass the accept, like accept the authorization we need to pass. So I will simply copy and I will say like authorization, and there will be a bearer token, so I will simply copy it right now. So I will simply go hit here and I will say bearer token, okay, and I will simply copy again that token from here from the response. So simply copy it and I will paste it here, and if I click on send, you can see that post is created properly over here. Okay, and if I go to listing API and if I click again the list, you can see that I got proper the list. Okay, so same thing, it's working. So now let me create another API for show details of the post. So I will say show and it will be pass one ID over here. So I will say ID, because if you go to the route list, there is, you can see here head, so that means show method, and that pass the ID, and we got the, we need to return the post detail. Okay, so I will say post find and I will say ID, and simply success response I will got, and you can see the post return, and simply save it. Okay, and now let me call this API here. So simply copy it, okay, and I will say post ID1, method will be the get, and authorization we need to pass like what we done here over here, like authorization. And if I say copy it, okay, and I will simply paste it, and if I click on send, you can see that post written and with all the details of what we have, we passed it. Okay, now we will create another API. We create another function for the update post. You can see here, if I go and if I say, and I will say update also pass the one ID. We also need to add the validation, so I will simply copy for from the creation store function. Simply we need require title, body, and if there is wrong anything, like if forgot to pass the title, then it returns the error. Okay, if everything going fine, then I will say post, and post will be find, and I will say ID. Okay, and then I will say post title equal to, I will get the title from the okay, and I will say post body, and I will get request body from the request object, and then I will simply save it. Okay, simply save it. Okay, and simple thing, I will copy this response, success response, and I will say post updated. Okay, and I will pass the post object. So let me run this example. So I will simply change it, this method, to the put method, because we, you can see here, for the delete, for the update, you can see that there is a put method, you can see pass the one. And if I go into the body, okay, and we need to pass the parameter over here, I will say title, and I will say updated type title, and I will say body, and I will say updated body, and simply send it. You can see that post updated and updated title, updated body. So update is also working. Next we will create the delete API. You can see that we already have a route for it. So I will go here and create the destroy method. So I will say destroy method, and simply pass the ID from the URL. So I will say ID, and simply I will say post colon find, and I will say ID, and then I will simply post delete. Okay, and then you can see return. Simply I will copy the success response over here and simply paste it over here, and I will say post deleted, and we just return null. Okay, so simply save it. Okay, and now if I go here, simply I will change it to the delete, and I will remove this all the parameters. We don't require to pass this parameter because we are already set up authorization with the token. So I will say post one should be delete, So if I click on send, you can see that post is deleted and run. So I hope guys you understand how we can create, like implement the Sanctum with the authentication, register, login, and how we can create the CRUD operation with the post, and you can see that using the Sanctum middleware. So I hope guys you understand well, and you like my if you like my video, then please subscribe my channel. Thank you so much for watching guys.